As we continue our discussion on regenerative tourism, it is impossible to do so without recognizing the history of Indigenous people who have stewarded the land from time immemorial. On the subject, it's important that we seek out, listen to, and respect the knowledge held by Indigenous people. And today I am honored to introduce a panel of tourism experts with decades of experience. I'm going to start with our moderator, Kevin Eshkawkogan. He's the president and CEO of Indigenous Tourism Ontario. Next, joining us all the way from Aotearoa, or New Zealand, Kylie Ruwhiu-Karawana. And finally, Kevin Seesequasis, who joins us from Beardy's and Okemasis Cree Nation in Saskatchewan, where he is the Director of Community and Tourism Development. All right, let's give a warm welcome to these three incredible panelists. And with that, I'll hand it over to you.
Miigwech. Ani bojo gigadon ene dijnikaz de dona sing donjaba gnoje doadem anishnaben and down. It's great to be here. You don't have to. I'm not going to translate to all of you. There's 50 languages on the translation. I don't think that's one of them, but all you need to know is you can just call me Kevin. Okay, simply enough. You call me Kevin. That's great. So I come from a place in Ontario here in Canada. I come from a place called Nodonasing, Manitoulin Island. I've also spent some time down in another place that's not far from here in a city. And I'll tell you, there's nothing better than being out in the north, out on the land, out in the willows. I feel like I haven't really been involved with the tourism or the trail industry, but I feel like you are my people because you guys get it. Connection to the land, I try to explain that to people in the city. They don't get it. I know you guys get it. So there's all these definitions and labels we have, but we're all the same and we're all connected and we're all coming from Eshkawkogan, Mother Earth. And I'm really glad that you're all here today, and I'm glad that I'm here with you. I've been watching everything that's been going on. This is an amazing place. But I could talk all day about the things that we do, and we've only got an hour. I want to make sure that we've got time for our guests here who are doing some fantastic things, and we're going to get into some great questions for them. But of course, I want to start with our friend here who traveled the furthest. I'm not going to introduce them. That's inappropriate. They're going to introduce themselves. So I'm going to hand it over here to my friend on my left.
Thank you.
Kylie.
I've got to stand up because I just got to stand up. Hutia te rito te hana keke, kei whia te komako e ko, ki mai ki i ahata, he aha te mea nui o te ao, maku e ki ahata, he tangata, he tangata, he tangata e. Kia ora koutou katoa, nau mai haere mai ki tēnei hui, nau mai haere mai ki tēnei rā. Ko Kylie Ruwhiu-Karawana tōku ingoa no Ngāpui ahau, kei Otiputi ahau e noho ana. Hi. My name is Kylie Ruwhiu-Karawana, and I'm very proud to be of Māori descent. I'm from the tribe of Ngāpui, which is in the north of the beautiful Aotearoa, New Zealand. Please come on down. It does take 35 hours, just warning you, but it's beautiful, well worth it, well worth it. My tribe is in the north, but I live in the south, so I cover the entire country, which is fun. And I am very proud also to be the Managing Director of TRC Tourism, which is, I've only got 5 minutes, I've been told, so I'm going to go quickly. But I'm also a Māori tourism operator, so I walk the walk and I talk the talk. My husband and I own and operate an award-winning, I might add, Māori tourism business in Dunedin, New Zealand. I wanted to mention 3 things while I was up here, because if you heard me talk yesterday, you'll know that I'm a speaker and we can talk for a long time. So I want to give 3 things to you. If you get nothing out of what I say today, remember these 3 things, okay? First one, pink elephants. Second one, story time. Third one, icebergs. No, you weren't expecting that, were you? Okay, pink elephants. When it comes to having conversations with with Indigenous communities, with any Indigenous communities around the world, what we have to make sure is that we address any pink elephants in the room, and sometimes that can take time. Time is of the essence when it comes to engaging with Indigenous communities, and that's a lot of what we do in our work with TRC, and what I've been doing for, as I said, someone said decades in the introduction, so we'll say decades. We've been doing that for a while. So address the pink elephants in the room, because if you don't, it'll derail everything. It'll derail projects, it'll derail relationships, it'll derail everything you're trying to achieve. The second thing I talked about, story times. Be cognizant of the stories that you tell. Be aware of whose those stories are, who belongs to those stories, and who has the right to tell those stories. One thing I remember being told when I was down in the beautiful South Island of Aotearoa in Milford Sound. Anyone been to Milford Sound? See, hands go up, it's a beautiful place. I was down there and I was told that Māori came from Waikiki. Had no clue. It came as a surprise to me that we came from Waikiki. And I asked, do we still own land? Because that would be great. Be cognizant of stories. Stories are powerful in a good way and a bad way. And the third thing I wanted to talk about was icebergs. When I talk about icebergs and I talk about stories, the stories that we share as Indigenous tourism whānau or families, think about that iceberg. 90% of an iceberg exists below the waterline. 10% exists above. We only ever share the 10%, because 90% sits at the heart of who we are as Māori, who we are as Indigenous people. And those are the stories that we transfer to our children and to our children's children, and hope that that thread of knowledge goes on forever. He kakanu aho. I am but a seed, descendant from a long line of chiefs. So it's my responsibility and my obligation to ensure that my children take those stories on. They're ungrateful about it sometimes, as I tell them over and over and over. But as I was ungrateful as a child, I now cherish the memories I have of my father and my grandmother sharing those stories with me. So that is my obligation, that is my privilege, and that is my right to ensure that I do that. So remember the iceberg. You may only be getting the tip of the iceberg, but what an amazing insight into a culture that you may not know a lot about to actually get. And the last thing I'll do is just translate the song that I was singing to you at the very beginning. Hu te tirito o te harikike, kaiwhia te kōmako e kō. If we remove the heart of the flax bush, where will the bellbird rest? If we take away what we hold most dear, if we destroy the lands that we love, the waterways that we enjoy, the sea that we have right around our country, for example, if we take away the heart of everything that we know and love that exists in this world, what will our children rest upon? Where will our children play, learn, love, and live? And I think that's what we all have as obligations in the space that we all work in, and that's all we have to do as a human race to ensure that we pass on to our people. I've got 11 seconds. I'm just going to sing you another real quick song. Whaia te iti kahurangi, ki te tuhohu koe, me he maunga teitei. Whaia te iti kahurangi, whaia te iti kahurangi, ki te tuhohu koe, me he maunga teitei. Whaia te iti kahurangi, whaia te iti kahurangi, which means my wish to you as you leave from here and go on is that strive to be excellent in everything that we do. Try to achieve the tasks and the challenges we put forward during this conversation and during this conference. And should you fail, let it only be as high as the loftiest of mountains, because your aspirations are so high. Nō reira, e hoa mā, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa.
Aha, miigwech. I'll just say this, I'm glad I'm not following that, but the other Kevin is. So, Kevin, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, I don't know how to follow that. I mean, I'm a Métis jigger, so I could jig maybe, but we don't have a fiddle, so...
Cue the music.
Yeah, cue the music right now. Beautiful introduction, thank you. Nice to meet you, Kylie. Ka kiao ki te tamskat no au. Kevin Seesequasis nitsiga asun. Beardy's no Okemasis, Cree Nation, Otsinia. My name is Kevin Seesequasis. I greet you all in a good way. It's beautiful to be here in our nation's capital sharing these wonderful stories, experiencing different cultures, and meeting new and wonderful, friendly faces. I'm from the Beardy's and Okemasis Cree Nation, and I am the Director of Community and Tourism Development. We've recently launched an organization called Pemiska Tourism. Pemiska is a Cree word. It means come and find it. And we invite you to come and find heart. We invite you to come and find history. We invite you to come and experience the wonderful hospitality of the Willow Cree people in Treaty 6 territory. It's beautiful to be here in the Algonquin and Anishinaabe territory. I haven't been to Ottawa in a while. It's been a little while, but I can tell you the last time I was here, particularly in this hotel, the 94 calls to action in 2015 were released in this space, in this hotel, and I was here, and I was honored and proud to be part of the group that was that received that important document through the Truth and Reconciliation Commission of Canada. So important things have always happened here, and this is another important event. So I'm grateful to be here. Thank you so much. I want to thank our friends at Trans-Canada Trails, Trans-Canada Trail for inviting me here today. At Pemiska Tourism, we believe that when you connect everything that's within you with everything that's around you, beautiful and magical things can happen. And that's our philosophy in our community. Our tagline is heart and history. And as Indigenous peoples, we've faced, as many of you know, in Canada particularly, we've been on this journey of reconciliation. And that it is so important because you have to recognize the history of our people. So when you take into consideration those dark chapters in Canadian history, you have to remember the resilience of Indigenous peoples. You have to remember that, and that's so critical. And we believe that that resilience has given us some very, very special gifts. Things like humility, things like compassion, things like generosity, things like humor. You know, we try to be as funny as possible. We try to be as welcoming as possible. I was honored and grateful that our friend Mathieu Roy had come to our community to experience our section of the trail, and we welcomed him with open arms, and his friends and his guests and his staff. So it's really, really important for us to always remember that heart is at the core of who we are. And then, of course, our history. We believe that through trails, we can connect with the land, get a better understanding of the land, and share our history with visitors. So we're really excited about that. So I'm not going to take up too much more time. I think we're going to get straight into some questions. So I just wanted to say thank you so much for allowing me to be here. And I'm not going to sing. Because I can't.
But that guy can dance, so
yes.
There's some music tonight. You
Catch
got
him
him.
for a jig later.
Yeah, he'll jig with you. There's a lot here in Canada. We're talking about reconciliation in action today and regenerative tourism. And, we talked about some of the teachings. So one of them is humility. We'll get into more of that later. But, I come from a long line of people who've been here for a long time. I'm the seventh generation of, a signatory of the Robinson-Huron Treaty. That's up in my territory by Manitoulin Island, north of Lake Huron. And one thing that we need to remember when we're talking about reconciliation, regeneration of tourism, things like that, we've got to ask ourselves one really simple question. Who were the original hosts of the lands that you're on, that you're trying to regenerate? Those guys might know something. Right? They might know something about those lands. I tell people all the time, North America, or Turtle Island as we call it, we had this whole continent figured out. Okay, people think we weren't utilizing it to its full potential, which is fine. There's plenty here for everybody. One thing I often tell the people is, hey, you've never heard of First Nation people ask somebody else to leave. And the reason for that in these lands is there's lots. There's lots here for everybody. It can provide for everyone. Eshkawkogan, Mother Earth, can do that for everybody all around the world. Okay, when I think of regenerative tourism, I think of one of the things that I observed during the global pandemic, we human beings Stop moving around. Mother Earth started healing herself. And I'm not saying I'm anti-tourism. I'm in the tourism industry. Right? But I'm saying this, you know, we're part of the problem. But we're trying to solve problems we created and pat ourselves on the back for it. Think about that for a little while. But there's lots of things that I'd love to change. But I want to ask these fellows here, these people, some things. Sorry.
Not Kylie.
Not Kylie. No,
So that's all fellas at home. Hey, fellas, what you up to, fellas?
Sorry, that's my language I use. I do a lot of things in sports, so forgive me for all of that, Kylie. She knows. But here's what I think. I think of all these things that if I could, I would change them if I had a magic wand. And I don't have a magic wand. Okay? And I don't know if, well, maybe Kylie does. She's pretty fantastic. But I want to ask each of you, from your perspective, if you had a magic wand, okay, what is one Indigenous activity or philosophy, or simply whatever you think is appropriate? What would you want to see the tourism, the travel, the trail industry immediately implement?
Me? Am I
Sure.
going first?
Oh, in song, please.
I'm going
I'll do
to
the interpretive dance. She'll do the song.
with interpretive dance on the
Yeah.
side. There's a lot of practices that we have, and like we've talked about, you know, Papa Tonuku is my Mother Earth, or the name we have. She's the same woman. She's the same person. She nurtures every living thing on our planet, and we need to treat her with the respect and the humility and the care that we would treat our grandparents. They have a heart of their own. We have the ability to manage our lands and have had the ability to manage our lands for generations. So learn the way that Indigenous people have cared for our lands when it comes to many of the things that we do to take care of it. And I guess give her the persona that she has. I would love for Trails to really embrace the fact that our landscapes have a heartbeat, that our landscapes have a personality, that our landscapes have a right to have their personhood taken care of in a weird way. So I'd love that to happen. Our feeling around kaitiakitanga is that we are simply caretakers of our grandparents for our children. We don't own land from a Māori context. We're simply the caretakers of it. So I'd kind of like that ethos to be embraced by the trail sector.
That's amazing.
Beautiful.
Yeah, it's very common. Kevin?
Very similar, but Neheoa ski, our land, our shared land. That's how we refer to it. If there was one value that I would want to see implemented all across both tourism and trails and the entire industry or associated industries, it would be not about us without us. There's the philosophy that, or there was the belief at one time that, oh, those Indians, they should stay on their land, right? They should stay in those little boxes, those reserves, and we're going to segregate them, we're going to keep them there, we're going to dehumanize them, we're going to put systems in place that subjugate them and keep them there. So our stories were not able to be shared. The beautiful hospitality and the beautiful humility and the beautiful compassion and the beautiful generosity of our peoples was not able to be shared. And it's where we learned how to be funny. It's where we learned how to be good-natured people. It's where we learned how to continue being stewards of the land. So not about us without us. That means when you're telling stories of the land, when you're telling stories of, the Indigenous peoples have been here since time immemorial, if those words come from your mouth, if they have come from your mouths at some point in your history as either travelers or as operators or as trail stewards, the first thing that you should be asking is, who was the original steward of the land and why aren't they here telling this story? Nothing about us without us. That idea that we have to be part of the conversation. For far too long, the tourism industry and other industries went, oh, we'll keep them over there. We'll keep them in that little box. And I think it's important for all of us to recognize that as the stewards of the land, as people with the original histories of these territories, as people with those stories, it's important to incorporate them. You can make a much more meaningful and a much more transformative experience for your guests when you're incorporating those original stories. So if there was one value, not about us, without us. Have us at the table. Incorporate us into the decision-making process. Make sure we're there on the trail with you, telling about the sharing stories about the medicine, sharing stories about the trail that goes from Winnipeg to Edmonton or wherever it is you are, right? I think that. Neheo Aski, we have to honor the land.
Yeah, that's an amazing and powerful message. And it reminds me of a story when I first got into the tourism industry. My background is actually accounting and political science. Yeah. How I ended up in tourism is a long story, which we don't have time for today. But it's amazing. And here's what I like to say is, it's natural for Indigenous people to be involved in tourism, involved in trails, because we were, some of the first guides and the first hosts all around the world. So there's really nobody better to be involved in these types of sectors, in my humble opinion. Okay.
Maybe,
but
Kevin, if I could just add really quickly something
absolutely.
that you just touched it. Who were the original people that greeted visitors to these territories? Wherever you went all across Canada, wherever anybody went 200, 300, 400 years ago, wherever anybody went, the original tour guide was an Indigenous person. Not about us, without us.
Absolutely. That's a great message. And so it reminds me of this. When I first got into this industry, they sent me to a far-off place called Berlin, to an event called ITB. Some of you might know it. And I had no idea what to think or do. But what we started developing coming out of there in tourism experiences were ahead of their time. We were doing what was called experiential tourism. It didn't even have a name back then. This is over 20 years ago, which is not that long ago in the bigger scheme. So we've been hosting people for thousands of years doing what we do. Not having a tourism background, I simply said to my team and my family, I said, how should we host people? And they said, well, your grandmother used to do this, your grandfather used to do that. And what it boiled down to after we gathered information informally was, hey, we were just being good hosts. We'd host people with some food, we'd tell stories, and we'd share. That's how we developed experiential tourism activities. And I'm pretty sure that happens everywhere in every culture in some fashion. And when I think of regenerative tourism, we've gotten to this point where we want to label everything, which is totally fine. We need some structure. Remember, I'm an accountant, so I like things in columns and numbered, okay? But with that being said, why are we now having to regenerate something? Because we were doing something a little bit differently. Let's just be a little bit more respectful of some things and figure out what we did and correct it. Let's tweak it a little bit. We don't always have to change everything. Like, we had some good definitions of what regenerative tourism is by dictionary standards, right? So there it is, as it was described to us, but regenerative tourism is where we're at. We can't go back and change the past, but we can do things in a positive manner moving forward. So when I think of regenerative tourism, I've got a lot of different ideas, that were kind of already mentioned. I'm not going to regurgitate those, but I want to ask our guests here and my friends, where do you see regenerative tourism taking us in 5 years or 10 years or even beyond? Kylie?
Say my name.
More singing.
It's always singing. In our house, everyone's singing.
That's great.
It's like the Von Trapp family, but brown. Anyway, when it comes to...
Yeah, well done.
When it comes to regeneration, I think we will be in 5 to 10 years' time. Where I hope we'll be is resilient. For me, and I talked about it yesterday, and my friend over here and I were having a conversation about it this morning. Building resilience in what we do is what we have to start focusing on. We need to build resilience into our communities, into our environments, into our work practices, into our life practices, into our children, my goodness. So I would hope we are more resilient in the way that we work, and that comes through working together. I love that message. And I think it's about ensuring that we have something to be proud of and to instill that pride into our kids' kids and our kids' kids' kids by teaching them to be resilient. And I think, if anything, the last few years have taught us is that our tourism industry around the world is not resilient. And we need to think more about what that looks like. And it could be about how we work, where we work, who we work with, and the type of experiences we deliver. So that's where I would hope regenerative tourism goes in 5 to 10 years' time.
I hope it goes there too. Kevin?
Going, same thing, the resilience of our people. There were things that our people were denied. Through the introduction of the pass system, we weren't able to constitute businesses and opportunities in our community. By keeping us in our communities, Canadians weren't allowed the opportunity to come and experience our hospitality, all of these wonderful things. But when we're talking about regenerative tourism, where do I see us in 5 to 10 years? I see healthy, thriving communities. Sorry, I don't remember what the lady's name previous. She talked about wealth and well-being. I think that's really, really important. I see tourism taking over local economies, building and developing local economies and taking over entire regions and being able to develop various businesses or what have you, different operations, different things that support tourism and that support the health and well-being of our communities. I think that's where, if I were to ask and if I were to wish and wave that magic wand, where do I see regenerative tourism in 5 to 10 years? I see it enveloping our communities, taking over our communities, and ensuring that all facets of our community, our food, our sports, our everything, supporting tourism, supporting the sharing of those stories, particularly in Canada. As Canadians embark on that journey of reconciliation, there is a desire, there is a need for that education. Canadians were denied that education. Canadians were denied an education of who Indigenous peoples are. They were denied that. You look in any history book, when any of us grew up, none of it talks about Indigenous peoples. In my history book, there was no mention of treaties. There were no mention of Indigenous folks. So Canadians were denied that opportunity. So welcoming people into our communities and showing them the best parts of who we are, that's how I see regenerative tourism moving in the next 5 to 10 years.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic, and it's so true. Often we look at, in Canada here, what has happened to Indigenous groups, and we only look at the one side, and we have to look at both sides. When I talk about treaties, being a descendant of a treaty signatory, there's two sides to that treaty, and the biggest benefactors of those treaties are honestly the non-First Nation people. The non-Indigenous people are the biggest benefactors. Okay, we're here on these lands today. They're unsurrendered. They're unceded by my cousins, the Algonquin, who are also Anishinaabe, as I am. But yet somebody in their mind and on a piece of paper owns this. At the end of the day, though, they don't actually own it. They're just using it. They're borrowing it from the future for now. They're taking care of it. They're caretakers of the land. And they've done something on it. They built this great facility. We all get to see, and sit in here and have a meeting and so on and so forth. But there's just so much that, when I think of tourism in the pandemic, for example, as we came out of it, the word resiliency came out of both these individuals' mouths. Indigenous people are resilient people. All around the world, we're still there. We're still here. And in spite of all the things that have happened to us, people trying to oppress us, eliminate us, there's been talk of genocide in this country in particular, we're still here. Our culture is still strong. There's still things going on. We're still powerful people. And what's amazing about it is we still show love. And in my culture, love is one of the 7 grandfather teachings. We still show love to everyone. We still welcome everyone here. We still want to share with everyone. We still want to host people. We want to talk about who we are. All these things. And that resiliency, along with the tourism industry and the trails industry and the Indigenous groups, man, you put those 3 together, you got an amazing mix there. You've got a perfect storm for something really positive to happen. But it's all perspective. So thank you for sharing those thoughts with us. Now, I want to give something back, because we always give back in our culture. I know it's similar in their cultures as well. And I want to ask you guys, we'll start with Kylie. Okay? What can this group of people and the trail industry do to help you help them?
Work with your neighbours. Work with the people who have, and we've talked about it, who have been living on those lands, that hold the storylines, they hold the threads that pull that land together. They've got the histories, they've got the stories, work with them to understand what their aspirations are, and then help them to achieve those aspirations. I think sometimes there's a sense of, I don't want to get it wrong, or there's a sense of fear, how do I do that? Find someone who can help you. We've all said that we're friendly people. I seem friendly, don't I? Right? Come to my house, you come to my house, my mum's going to say, you want a cookie? If you don't want a cookie, she'll go, you want a cake? If you don't want a cake, she'll start cooking lamb. So say yes to the cake or the cookie, right? So we're friendly people. Invite them to the table. Have the conversations, okay? Involve us in those conversations. It's absolutely vital for us to be around the table because we bring a different lens. We look at the world in a different way. And those conversations, when they're shared, and those relationships, when they're fostered and they're strong, the world is our oyster when it comes to trails. So I just invite you to face the fear and go and have those conversations. Remember the pink elephant, you know, put it on the table, have those conversations. So that's what I would challenge you with.
I think that's great advice, and this is not a shameless plug, but we did a report on being a good neighbor, and that's all it really takes. I don't know if he's here today, but there's a fellow, Rory, from Brantford that I met yesterday, and I'll be going to see Rory in Brantford and check out his arenas and watch a hockey game with him, and you know, just have a conversation. You know, what's the worst that could happen? They don't like you and walk away. You know, it's okay. We're going to go along. But I'll just say this, Kylie. I'm coming over and I'll take all of the above.
I'll let her know.
Kev?
I think it's the same. It's come into our communities, right? There has been, through media portrayals, through just that lack of education about who Indigenous folks are. There's an inherent fear amongst a lot of people to visit our communities. You don't need permission to come into our communities. You can just come and say hi. I mean, that's the best part about it, particularly, and I'm gonna go back to reconciliation again, right? Trails are a tangible link to many things. They're a tangible link to Nehewaski, Mother Earth, land, but also they're the tangible link that connect all of us. There's something that actually connects us. And in the spirit of reconciliation, this is something that I think is really important. I'm going to stand up. I'm going to steal a note from her playbook. But I'm going to ask everybody, reconciliation is much, much, much more than just land acknowledgements. You have to come into community. You have to come and see we're actually really, really, really nice people. We are. We're good neighbors. You know, all the stories that you've heard, all the media portrayals, all of the negative things that you see about Indigenous people, 99% of it is all crap. It's all garbage. It's not true. It's not who we are. We're nice people. We'll invite you to have a cookie. My cookum will make bannock. My cookum will, my uncle will go hunt an elk for you, and we'll cook it together. We won't actually do that, but but come into our communities. Come and learn the true nature of our people. Come and learn that the most important act of reconciliation that we can all do is shake each other's hand and say, hey, you're my friend. What happened to us, that history long ago, never again. Never, ever again. Those bad ideas, those misconceptions, the ugly truths, never again. Never again. So I'm going to ask you all, stand up really quick. Stand up. Yeah, you too.
I'm up.
Okay, now we're going to dance.
Oh,
No.
now it's okay.
What I want you to do, in an act of friendship, in Cree kinship, wakotowin, that's the word we use, wakotowin. That means we're all related. This simple act of friendship is more meaningful than a land acknowledgement, I think, and it's just shake each other's hands. Shake somebody's hand. Say hi.
Hi. Just doing what I'm told.
Yeah.
Okay, now sit down and be quiet. Okay.
Now they're being too friendly.
Yeah. All right.
See now where you started?
Yes. All right. Thank you so much. You know that simple act of reconciliation, that really simple act of reconciliation, the fundamental tenet of reconciliation is that what happened to you will never happen again. We're friends now, we're relations, Wakotuan, we're all related. In my territory, we say we're all treaty people. We're all related. What happened back then won't ever happen to you. And I'm going to make sure that that never happens again. That's what that handshake was. It was more than just, oh, hi, nice to meet you. It's an agreement, it's a contract. You're my relation, you're my friend, you're my good friend. So those things, never again.
That's pretty powerful again. Amazing people, right? So this is unreal. To get back to that one little story that I had about ITB, one thing that I took away from that experience, I was on a panel, similar to this, but there was about 12 of us, and we all spoke our own language, talking about tourism, or back then it would be called Aboriginal tourism, or it had just other terms. But one thing I took away from that was we all have the same values. We all talk about being connected to the earth, and we all talk about hosting people in a good way and wanting people to come and have that human experience with us. And you hear it again today, and I know, like I said earlier, I feel like I'm with my people here because you guys get that connection to the land. It's our responsibility collectively to just perpetuate that. All these labels and things that differentiate us, that's great, we can celebrate them, but at the end of the day, we're all the same. And we're all connected at the same level, unless we just got to treat people in a really, really good way. It reminds me of one of our teachings that I've been taught is humility. Okay, here's what I think of when I think of regenerative tourism. It's our teaching of humility. And that teaching, when I teach it to people who've never heard it before, I keep it really, really simple. I think about this. Mother Earth, Eshkawkogan, okay, we need everything on it as human beings. But it does not need us. And it will thrive without us. The animals will thrive. We're just here borrowing time and space off of Eshkawkogan. And that, when you start thinking about that, I'm not trying to get you all bummed out or anything, but you know, it's pretty powerful. It's pretty powerful. But we want to hear from you guys. So we've got a couple of mics set up here. I encourage you to stand up, get in line. We'll do as many as we can with the time that we have, but I'd like you to come up and ask us some questions. See one fellow getting up. Somebody's got to take this mic over here. I know you guys can stand up because you all stood up and just shook hands with people. So let's start over here.
Hi there, Steve Couchman from the Trans-Bhutan Trail. And question I had was really around, we were looking at tourism from the provider side, but maybe a little bit more about from the guest side. What's the responsibility of a guest coming? And I think about is tourism, because this debate goes on, is tourism a right that we all have, or is it a privilege? And if it is a privilege, what's our responsibility coming as guests?
Yeah, that's a great question. I've been doing tourism for a long, long time, but I want to give the opportunity to my guests here. Kevin, Kylie, do you want to take a stab at this one?
I'll just say really quickly, have an open mind and a good heart. Come to our communities with an open mind and a good heart. You might hear things that you don't like. You might hear things that you don't know. But everywhere, people will speak with an air of authenticity. People will speak their authentic truth. They'll tell their story as they know it. So it might not be directly related to the story you've heard. It might not be directly related to the history you've read, but it's their truth. So come to our communities, and please come to our communities. If there is a responsibility or what's something that you can do, Steve, it's come to our communities with an open mind and an open heart.
I think I would say that there's also the element of...
Thank you.
sorry. This girl likes to talk. Yeah. And this is really interesting to me because as a tourism operator, I think that, when it is a privilege to come and hear me. No, just kidding. It's a privilege to come out and travel, but it's a privilege for me to have people on my tours. You didn't have to choose me to come out stargazing. You came and chose me to come out and, and show you my sky realm. And that's the piece that I think that we have. We have a word in Māori called manaakitanga. And when you break it down, it's mana ki te tangata. They use it in New Zealand to describe the hospitality or tourism industry. But it's more than that. It's about mana ki te tangata. It's empowering people. So I empower my guests when they come to me by sharing maybe only 10%, as I said, with my iceberg, but it's a huge insight into a culture they don't understand in terms of that spectrum of authenticity. But they're also empowering me as the host by simply coming and sharing their time, which is sometimes more valuable than the dollars they've spent on the tour, that they've come to actually spend their time with me. And that's something that we appreciate. So we have an ethos in our business is that you come as manuhiri, you leave as whānau. You come as a guest, but you leave as family. And we will feed you because, I'm my mother's daughter. And we will have a great time and we will share stories and we will sing together. So I do think it is a privilege, but it's that open mind, that open heart as a host and a guest, it creates that reciprocal relationship, which is why we all love to be in tourism. So.
Oh, great answers. I love having them on stage. I was looking forward to this panel. It's less talking that I do, but it's all good. So I'm an operator as well, and I do a lot of different things for the communal good. But to answer the question really simply is, yeah, it's definitely a privilege. It's a privilege on both sides of that equation, like I was mentioning earlier, right? Like it's a privilege to host, and it's a privilege to visit. There are some responsibilities, in my humble opinion, that, yeah, you at least in my region and in Canada here, you should have some base knowledge. You should understand that, yeah, saying things like, oh, residential schools were a long time ago, and they weren't that bad for you guys. It's a little bit inappropriate for some people. I've been in politics, I've been in tourism, I've been called every name in the book around the world. I've got thick skin, but there's others who don't, and they're sensitive and they're fragile, and understandably so. So just the responsibility, in my opinion, with all of this, when you're visiting Indigenous groups or any region, treat it like it's your, it's the place that you eat. And, you treat it the way you want to be treated or the way you want your land treated. It should be fine, okay? But we've got another brave soul that stepped up, Miigwech.
I think I just have one more piece really quick, if I can just add one more thing
sure,
really quickly. If you're unsure and you're going into a community and you don't know, and at least in my territory, bring tobacco. You might laugh, bring tobacco. If you offer tobacco to whomever is hosting you, they'll know that you're coming there in a good way. You're coming there with good intentions. That's our way. So if you're coming there and you're not sure, you haven't been able to speak with anybody, and you just don't know, how do I interact with these crazy Indians? Bring tobacco. You can laugh, it's okay. Just bring tobacco. The recipient of that tobacco will always acknowledge that gift and will always recognize that you're coming there with good intentions. So even if you are not as informed or haven't taken the opportunity to educate yourself, if you go there with tobacco and you offer that, that person who's receiving that tobacco will know you're coming there with good intentions.
Yeah, that's a good point really quickly. He's giving you the shortcut.
Yep.
Okay, you want to find the protocol of the nation that you're going to visit. So that protocol will fly in my area as well. Okay, but in some places they look at you, why are you bringing tobacco? You go to the West Coast, far West Coast, that way they're like, what's this for? We're not Cree, we're not Anishinaabe. So you want to understand that protocol, but Kevin's giving you the secret to go to his place. She said just show up and she's feeding you. Like, we got it made. We got it. So let's get to our last question here.
I guess it's more of a comment. My name's Nicola, and I live near the Credit River, which is the former home of the Mississaugas of the Credit. and we try to honor that. I'm a writer, a journalist, and an author. Recently wrote a book about the Bruce Trail, and I dealt with Indigenous First Nations issues. And I just want to comment, because it is terrifying as a writer that you're going to get it wrong. And it really discourages, and I know you've brought that up, but it really discourages us as non-Indigenous people. So I really appreciate this, and I understand better. I attended a sweat lodge in North Bay, and a friend of mine, Indigenous person from the Doki's First Nation, he took me, and on the way there he said, "Do you have any tobacco?" and I said, "No," not understanding. So it's really helpful, and so it is terrifying. So thank you for the invitation, and I hope I can take advantage of that. So it's a very useful panel discussion. Thanks.
Go ahead. Miigwech for sharing. And now you're all getting brave. You're all getting brave now. Hang on one second. Yeah. So with that here, I want to share a simple teaching that we share in our culture. It's really simple. The very first teaching you get taught is there's no right or wrong way. There's just different ways. And then as you get older, we teach about tolerance and other things as well. But there's no right or wrong way. There's just different ways. And we'll figure it out. So we've got about 2 minutes left here. We got 3 people up. So I don't know who was first. I lost track. I'm sorry.
It's okay. I just wanted to go because this side of the room looked a little bit weak.
Okay, I'll try to be
You guys
quick.
don't look that weak up there. But let's start with this big.
So I feel fortunate to have worked with a number of indigenous populations in the United States. And some of the research that's just emerging that I thought would be interesting to share is that, and this is just brand new stuff, but the population of North and South America was nearly 100 million prior to 1400s, before the Europeans started arriving. And in 100 years' time, that population was reduced to 10 million. And so a lot of the culture, the history that was here and the interactions was lost. It was never, because of the way the cultures were crafted, there was not, information that was stored like other cultures around the world. And I think that trails provide an opportunity for us to rediscover the cultures and the identities, which is hard because so much information was lost. But I appreciate this panel today and the way you guys have conducted it. And I think more of us can and should get involved with understanding the First Nations people and revealing their stories through trails. So I just wanted to make that comment, and thank you guys for the presentation today.
We appreciate that. Miigwech. And this will be our last question.
Okay. My name is William. I'm from Kenya. I'm a game ranger for many years in a national park. So for many people who have gotten the chance to have a safari, from your context, trails redefine tourism, because this is where it's all about human relations. When you see the people come on the safari vans and get into the wildlife areas, it's like we in Africa say it's us and then them. But now, coming out of that car, taking that walk in that village, in that same trail, means everything. And so in this way of reconciliation, I could tell you that it is the trails has put everything on the same level. And I want to thank the World Trails Network for really bringing up this for many years. And we hope that in Africa, we're going to open trails, open opportunities, and people to learn more about ourselves. We've got tons and tons of experiences. Thank you.
Miigwech for those comments. We appreciate that. And our time is up here today, unfortunately. But before we go, because we're in Anishinaabe territory, it's my obligation and my responsibility to teach you a few words. And we're going to wrap it up. First, I want to thank our guests, Kylie and Kevin. They were amazing. They're going to be here all day. So our word for thank you is miigwech. Okay. Good job. You guys, you're queued up. That's awesome. And we don't have a word for goodbye. We simply say see you later. And our word for see you later is bamapi. That's a simple version. So let's hear you say it. Bamapi. Yeah, not bumblebee. Bamapi. Okay. So with that, I'll say miigwech bamapi.